extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this piece of property. Let me get that off there. Due to the existing layout and configuration of the site, including preservation of all healthy grand trees, corner setbacks, landscaping buffers, dimensions, and stormwater detention areas. As the letter of intent states, the current configuration makes it exceptionally difficult to provide adequate capacity for vehicle stacking for the drive-through without designing double lanes to increase the capacity. Additionally, the enforcement of the current zoning regulation of only single-lane drive-throughs, except for banks and utilities, creates an exceptional condition for this specific property. Other notable, extraordinary, and exceptional conditions are the extreme popularity of the restaurant with high demand, coupled with the unusually close proximity to Folly Road, creating the potential to cause traffic stoppages and snarls. And B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. In the response, these conditions may not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity, as commercial properties nearby do not have the existing configuration and layout of the subject property. Additionally, any restaurants in the vicinity that have drive-throughs are single-lane drive-throughs, and within 300 feet of the subject parcel, there are no properties with the conditions listed above, no corner properties that have existing stormwater detention areas, grand trees, large landscape buffers, or existing configuration. Furthermore, there are no properties in the vicinity that have a need for a double drive-through that spatially have the ability to create one, yet the enforcement of the zoning code would not allow it without a variance. There we go. C. Because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. In response, the application of this ordinance, specifically section 153.336, architectural and landscape design guidelines, may not restrict the utilization of the property when it is being used in single drive-through mode. However, it will effectively prohibit and unreasonably restrict the implementation of the site improvements aimed to increase the stacking capacity of the drive-through operation and improve traffic flow by preventing stoppages and snarls on adjacent roads due to the previously mentioned existing conditions. D, the authorization of a variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the zoning district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. In response, the authorization of this variance may not be a detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, since there has been no enforcement of, and more remarkably, no complaint of the current use of a double drive-through. As the applicant's letter of intent states, granting of the variance will improve traffic circulation, reduce overflow onto surrounding streets, and lessen the impact to surrounding properties. The character of the zoning district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. And E, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall not grant a variance, the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in a zoning district, to extend physically a non-conforming use of land, or to change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. Response, the variance does not allow a use that is not permitted in the zoning district, nor does it extend physically a non-conforming use of land or change the zoning district boundaries. And F, the need for the variance is not the result of the applicant's own actions. Response, the need for the variance may not be the result of the applicant's own actions because the size and the configuration of the lot are existing site conditions. Existing site conditions also include the location and number of grand trees on the site. Additionally, the need for the variance, as the letter of intent explains, is to improve traffic flow due to an increase in patronage, which was a need that did not exist when the current layout was configured at no fault of the applicant. And G, granting of the variance does not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of this ordinance. Response, the variance may not conflict with the comprehensive plan, specifically the transportation element needs and mitigating the impacts of a changing population on the existing transportation system. Additionally, the proposed site plan shows a new multi-use path which satisfies another transportation element need of providing safe, convenient pedestrian and bicycle systems in appropriate locations, while an economic development strategy is to continue to encourage positive redevelopment and development by offering incentives such as non-conforming signage reimbursements and buffer reductions for multi-use paths placement, transit facilities, etc. And that is all for the staff review.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kristen. Are there any questions for Kristen from BZA members?
Yes. Ms. Crane, Dave Savage. I'm mindful of some of the questions in the last meeting. I think Ms. Fabry picked up on something that I may not have been very knowledgeable on. She was interested in, I guess, surface water absorption. I think she had a concern about flooding, and I may have missed this before, but are there county, state, or federal guidelines or regulations that would dictate the materials here that the applicant would have to comply with?
Yes, they will go through quite an extensive stormwater planning permit approval process. And in addition, and I probably should have mentioned it last meeting, the town has supplemental stormwater standards that we adopted that are on top of what the county would already require. It's more stringent than what they would require, and it's something that will be regulated after their plan is approved by a number of different entities.
All right. Yeah, that was my concern. I wanted to make sure that we weren't making certain decisions, but that those other guidelines. Based on that answer, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Ms. Crane?
I do, I think, and I'm going to try to phrase it properly. What we are voting on tonight, I just want to clarify, is to allow the double drive-through period, like not necessarily allow them to do all the building, because they don't need to have a permit to do all this excess building now that they've taken the grand tree away.
Right. This will be the only variance that's required. Everything else will be permitted, but it'll be permitted administratively.
And it does not have, so none of that has to come through us. So this is just kind of a courtesy given us all of the detail. What we are really voting on is the double drive-through.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if not, thank you very much, Ms. Crane. And at this time, I will call the applicant. You have a 10-minute limit to share between yourselves. And I know you all stated your names and addresses before, but if you would at least give us your names again so we can know who we're listening to.
I'm Michael White with G. Robert George and Associates, and I think Kristen covered it pretty thoroughly. We've endeavored to go back and look at the concern about tree preservation, particularly removal of that grand tree. And I think everyone can see by the site plan, we tried to maximize the offset, and we actually got the arborist back involved. And if my memory serves me, we provided a letter of recommendation, and we're going to include that on the plans, not the letter, but the subject matter of tree preservation. We're going to include that on the plans to make sure that they're taken seriously by the contractors and subcontractors. We've always endeavored to try to limit the amount of impervious surface area to address the stormwater issues, and we know we have a very significant stormwater regulation that we have to abide by. So we've tried to factor that even into our site planning. It's probably hard to see, but you maybe can see very shadowed or ghosted underground detention, the location of which we've tried to coordinate with trees so we don't impact root zones for any of the grand trees that we're trying to preserve. And there'll be two separate detention areas that we're planning on, one in the front of the Chick-fil-A where the extra parking bay is added, and then one over to serve the expansion parcel where the circulatory area is for the dumpster. We even obviously went so far as to do a preliminary landscape plan, and we're going to obviously continue to work on that and work with the staff to make sure that it meets the ordinance requirements and any planting criteria, screening, things of that nature. So we've again endeavored to try to address the concerns of the community, concern of the board, and subject to any questions you might have. We really feel this is necessary. Chick-fil-A is a successful business, and they've had a lot of good patronage, and obviously they can't control how many folks come to their store. So it is an exceptional situation that we're dealing with. And if we don't do something, it's obviously not going to improve the situation. And if the city decides to make it go back to a single lane drive-through like it was originally designed 15, 16 years ago, then we're really going to have some serious traffic problems. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to address them. And the Chick-fil-A representative, Chad Ross, is here, and also the operator, Jason Williams. So if you have any questions of us, please feel free to ask us anything you'd like. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Does Mr.
David
Ross?
was raising his hand.
I don't want to take away from y'all's 10 minutes. You've got, do the other fellows want to speak? And then we can question you after your 10-minute presentation.
Thank you. My name is Jason Williams. I'm the operator of the Chick-fil-A on James Island. So I've lived on James Island for over 16 years, and I know there's a lot of concern about development and that kind of stuff on James Island. I agree with that, and I feel it myself. But we've been at Chick-fil-A obviously for 16 years, and so we want to continue to get better, and we want our Chick-fil-A on James Island to be something that everybody can be proud of. And so we're asking for this opportunity to build a double drive-through, one to again help my team be safe. Obviously, we're operating in a quasi double drive-through right now because that's what we've had to do, and hopefully we can continue to do that. But just really to try to do it to take care of our team. I think you'll see this plan is meant to be a much safer plan for the staff and for the guests. Another thing too, just as new Chick-fil-A's are built, they're all basically built with double drive-throughs. Obviously, we're 16 years old, and that didn't exist when we were built. And every time a Chick-fil-A kind of goes through a big remodel like this, they do a double drive-through because they just know it's so much better for the guests and for the team members. And so, again, we just kind of ask that would be approved here on James Island, so we can provide the level of service that is expected from a Chick-fil-A. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Ross, were you going to speak as well?
Yeah, thanks, Chad Ross. And thanks again for allowing us to present and for hearing this. I just wanted to reiterate really quickly. I run the project from our side, from back in Atlanta. And I just want to say that when we do these remodels, a lot of times we are reacting to a known need. And we know that there is a traffic problem here. The way that the drive-through is functioning now, we know it is unsafe. It's there's a lot of different things with the weather, just with traffic and the way it flows. We know it's very, very inefficient. And so the heart of Chick-fil-A is to go out there and definitely try and solve that problem. And that really is why we're here. And why we would want to do it. I think I said the last time, our remodel isn't just this site. We try and do it holistically, and we try and include everything that we can to make everything better, the customer experience, but especially the team members and then our operators as well. So thanks for letting me share. And I think all right, thanks.
Thank you so much. I believe David had a question for Mr. White, and we can just start with that, and you take it away, David, and then we'll go with the other.
I can answer it.
I think you can, and I want to make sure that we all know what we're relying on. Kristen, is it possible to share the screen with either that landscape plan, probably the landscape plan, because it's not as cluttered. And my question would be, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but no, Kristen, this one won't work. You need to go back to the
I
call
can
them-
see your cursor, or somebody's got a cursor on there.
Kristen, can you go to the other master plan? There you go. If you look at the side of the building to the bottom, to the left, a little farther over, Kristen. A little farther over. You see where this first car is? From that car going to the center of the building, is it your plan that that's not going to be a double lane, but just a single lane until it gets to that point and then branches out?
Yes, the plan is that it will be single lane adjacent to the main entry point of the building where there's currently an existing canopy.
Right.
It's more like a fabric type canopy, but that will provide a circulatory lane and a backing lane for customers who will park and walk in. Unlike, I think right now, I think there's actually 2 lanes that are
And that's what I
really
would.
being used there. And that was due to the fact that they shut down the dining room. So there's not as many folks that are parking. I think they may be the mobile app one, may be using some of those, but now the intent is so that will be open all the time for traffic circulation.
All right. So it appears that that one lane that you're showing on this plan is actually a little less than what's being used in practice now, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, sometimes there is another lane parallel to that lane shown on the plan.
Jason he would like to, address that, and I'll interject any questions you might have.
Yes, I understand. I think I understand your question. Yes, currently we're doing a double queue, kind of exactly where the cursor is now. We have 2 lanes that are queuing before the order taker. And that, just like he said, one of the reasons we're having to do that is because we don't have a way to wrap around the building. We don't have a way to queue around the building because we don't have enough space in the parking lot. So we've had to do a double queue up to the order taker. The idea with the new plan, if it's approved, is our order takers will be basically at the horseshoe, like the neck of the horseshoe. That's where the order taking will start. Yes, exactly. Or even further along possibly. And so we won't have to double queue. We'll double queue after they've taken the order, if that makes sense. And again, that's safety. I know the parking lot is congested because the double cars queuing up. That's just what we've had to do with the old plan.
But I guess my question is, we as a board can rely on this schematic right here.
That is correct.
Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone else for the applicant? Corey, Ms. Hip?
Hey, I actually drove by today and paid close attention to the existing parking spots. And I believe in our last meeting, you were speaking to, they were, I guess, made of a different kind of material that was going to absorb the water. And that is not there now, correct? Those are just regular asphalt parking spots. And what you are proposing here, I believe in the last meeting, I cannot remember what impervious, I think is what you called it, impervious materials.
There are currently pavers that are on the backside, and I think there are also some on this plan. Obviously, it doesn't show the existing conditions, but we plan on putting pavers in to meet the stormwater quality requirements and quantity requirements as necessary.
Yeah, I
So
haven't
we
put
need
it
to
up
put-
on my end.
So on this plan, we plan on putting pavers where the parallel spaces are to the west of the site, and also adjacent to the tanning salon or whatever that business is to the north of the site. And if it turns out the stormwater requirements dictate that we have more impervious surface, then we'll obviously go to other parking bays if necessary. So we're trying to address the surface water requirements, and then of course the underground detention, the arch systems will also address that. And those arch systems are open on the bottom. And we'll try to take advantage of the fact that you can get water quality treatment through the infiltration into the soil. But we can only take so much credit for that. There's limits in the ordinance that don't allow that. So we're going to try to cross every T and dot every I as it comes to storm drainage.
So the ones that are shaped like honeycombs are the impervious pavers. On the drawing, if they're shaped like honeycomb, I guess.
That is
Okay.
correct.
I've got it blown up quite large in front of me, so I'm just trying to understand everything. Thank you. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I do, Brooke.
Okay, Ms. Fabry?
Mr. White, when we met last time, I think when we left, we asked for you guys to go back and look at trying to save the Grand Tree, which you did, and some more information about stormwater detention. Is that your recollection?
I know we had that discussion, and we have done a lot of preliminary work on sizing the stormwater detention that you see on the plan. It's hard for me to see on the screen that I'm looking at, but I believe it should be shown on that plan. But I know we've provided plans with that detention shown. We have done preliminary sizing calculations. Have I submitted those to the town yet? No, but we can, and we will abide in full compliance with the ordinance. It's my understanding that we're going to have to reduce the amount of runoff that's currently coming from this combined site so that it's at least 20% of what's coming off of there right now. That's my understanding of the ordinance. So it has some fairly significant teeth in it, and we're going to have to reduce. There's not a whole lot of runoff. And when I say a whole lot, we've got a very large amount of impervious surface area on this site as it exists and as it will be built if we are approved to do so. So there's not a whole lot of runoff coming out right now, but we're going to even reduce that more because the ordinance requires us to do so.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. My question was very simple. It was that what we got in our packet today was basically a pavement plan. It didn't have anything for your stormwater plan, which you say is still a work in progress. But what we got in our packet was simply the pavement plan, pretty much the outline, and not any detail about everything. The solid black dots that are kind of in the parking spaces and in the pervious parking spaces on the new lot that you'll be taking over, do those indicate catch basins?
No, those are boring locations. That's the locations where Terracon, who's doing the geotechnical investigation, is going to do the borings to measure the groundwater level and determine the infiltration rates. And that's where we plan on putting the two separate underground detention facilities.
Okay.
Matter of fact, if I might inject, we actually have had to do some subsurface utility investigation work, and maybe you might even seen it, where we vacuum excavate holes in the ground to actually locate stormwater tie-in points. So in hopes that we would be approved, we've actually engaged a company to start doing that so we can make sure that we can complete these storm drain connections and meet the storm water requirements that y'all are obviously wanting us to do so.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I know it's not something that you're requesting a variance for stormwater, nor, could you, but I think it goes to criteria D that, concerns us with the consideration of adjacent property and the public good, that if you're going to, impact stormwater, that definitely has to do with the surrounding neighborhoods. So I appreciate your explanation.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Any other questions for the applicant?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I now have a question based on hearing Amy's series of questions. A representative from the applicant, do I understand now that with the new regulations that if this variance is approved, that your stormwater plan will have to result in a 20% decrease in the present stormwater runoff of the 2 lots that you will be developing?
That's my understanding. I've not read the regulation in extreme detail, but I have reviewed it. I've actually talked to Charleston County about it. Chris Wanamaker, I've talked to the Public Works Director here about it. So we're planning on abiding by, obviously we're going to have to abide by it. And we've actually already done some preliminary calculations to make sure that we can do so. We won't know for sure the configuration of the underground detention until we get the geotechnical work, because we need to know where the groundwater table is, because the ordinance also restricts how the positioning or level of underground detention has to be set above the groundwater. So we need that information before we can go further with design. So I understand the board maybe wanted to see some more design information. We could provide some preliminary information, but we obviously need a lot more information to go into the details of designing underground detention with infiltration.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else? No other questions for the applicant? Well, thank you, Mr. White, Mr. Ross, and Mr. Williams. As I stated at the beginning of this meeting, at the April 19th meeting, a motion was made and seconded to approve the application for discussion. We will now continue that discussion. Who would like to start? Actually, if you don't mind, I will start. I would like to mention, I think this is important. We did get new letters. We had 11 new emails / letters in support. Everyone had their name and address, which is great. We asked for that at the last meeting. And then we had one new one against the variance. And at our last meeting, as you'll recall, we had 23 against, 6 were specific to the tree case, which has been withdrawn. So that was 17 against the double drive-through. We had 6 in support. So if you add those up with what we have now that are new, we have 17 for, 18 against. So it's neck and neck, pretty close with that, just one more against. So these are all available to public record. If anyone wishes to see them, I know all of you all have gotten them. And so I just wanted to put that on the record. And then if we can start our discussion, who would like to start?
Will you restate the motion?
Of course.
Thank you.
I can read it pretty much.
Thank you, Pally, in those letters.
Of course. Let's see, I have it marked right here. Y'all just bear with me. I have a lot of papers here. So Chairwoman Lyon moved to approve the variance for discussion. Commissioner Smith seconded. So basically the motion on the floor is to approve it. It was seconded by Mr. Smith. We can always amend it with any conditions, but right now what we're discussing and potentially voting on is to approve it as is.
The double drive-through.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to just say, to me, this case, this is just whether or not the double drive-through meets the criteria, each and every criteria. I have some heartburn about some of it in some ways, but I do think that there would be a real traffic problem if something isn't done one way or another. And so I tend to think that for the matter of public good, and also I think it's something that they didn't plan on, and I do think it is beyond their control. I don't think this is intentional, that there's such a potential problem with traffic. So it's an unusual case and perhaps unique right now for us. So it meets a lot of the criteria right there.
And we have confirmed that they would indeed have to resort back to a single lane drive-through if this was not granted, which is just.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps they could continue like they are on some temporary basis, but that's whatever the rules are. I don't know.
Well, I think that we got the letter from Bo that said that it's all or nothing, like it's either single or we grant this variance. And so I look at all the criteria based on that, and it meets all the criteria because there's no way on God's green earth they can go back to a single lane drive-through. People will be backed up to the Harris Teeter, and then you throw in Folly Beach traffic, and it's just anyway.
Could make it difficult for emergency vehicles to get up and down the road.
Yeah, and then I would say that I do find it appealing that they would dress up the sidewalk for mobility of Folly Road. But I know this is not the Roy and Corey show, so.
If I may,
Please.
excuse me, Ms. Hipp, had you concluded?
I have, yes, thank you.
My analysis always starts with, what's being requested. Is it a special exception or is it a variance? In this case, it's not a special exception. It's a variance. And the variance is sought by an existing property owner, not someone trying to grant, to jam in a non-conforming use into a property that they seek to buy or use. And then I have to look at the application, and I got to tell you, Mr. Smith last time made a very sound request of the applicant. Can you go back and redraw something that would preserve that grand tree? And, I don't profess to speak for Roy, but he may have noticed, like I did, that a lot of the earlier opposition was focused on that grand tree removal. And the applicant did what we requested. And they have come back and they have presented a plan. And, I am mindful from previous decisions of ours where we have granted variances under promises of people that they wanted to develop things for family homes, and they turn around and sell the property right after we granted a variance that turned Seaside Lane into an area where you can have manufactured homes. So I look at the efforts that they took with regard to concerns for the board. And likewise, with regard to Ms. Fabry's questions, I felt a little inadequate at the last hearing because I didn't pick up on those things that she was talking about, stormwater drainage and things like that. But I knew that myself as a novice, that wasn't an area of expertise that I had. So I just wanted to assure myself that those requirements were going to be looked at and enforced by someone else. And, based upon what Ms. Crane tells me, that the town has more stringent regulations than anyone else, and that if this application is to proceed after us, they will ensure that that stormwater plan is followed. But I do know this, a Chick-fil-A built 16 years ago, their stormwater plan is going to be a lot less intensive than one that's going to be approved today. And our decisions have to be reasonably related to the objective evidence that that we received. So for me, and it's because I appreciate the valid concerns of Ms. Fabry. I feel that I can rely on Ms. Crane's statements. Likewise, I can feel that I can rely on the testimony under oath by the applicant's representative, that it's his belief that the eventual stormwater runoff of now these two lots is going to be 20% less than what previously existed. And that's what we all seek. So that that doesn't concern me. But as Roy indicated, and as Corey indicated, the applicant simply seeks a variance to formalize what is presently in existence. And my question in bringing up that site plan is, okay, are you telling me that from the corner of that store till the horseshoe, there's only going to be one lane? And he goes, yes. And I say, can we rely on that? Yes. Well, that's actually less of a stacking of vehicles than what presently exists. So, you know, I have to, I have to look at what are the facts on the ground and what are we asking to be done? And I agree with, I believe it was Ms. Hip that says, you know, if you're going backwards in 16 years, what worked 16 years ago isn't going to work on Eugene Gibbs and Folly Road anymore. So when I look at these criteria, especially A, are there extraordinary conditions? I thought the staff opinion got it right. There are, because of the layout of the site and our desire that they preserve all healthy grand trees, and because of the corner setbacks and the landscape buffers. So I think that criteria is met. Likewise with B, where it says conditions do not generally apply to other properties. Again, the staff did a really good job letting us know that within 300 feet of this area, there are no properties with the conditions listed above. That be the corner buffers, the stormwater requirements, the grand trees. And then that brings us to C, the property is effectively prohibited or unreasonably restricted in the utilization. And I do agree that without the variance of the ordinance, it will restrict the site improvements. Those improvements are designed to increase the efficiency and improve the traffic flow, which prevents stoppages. And I love the word by the staff, that the snarls on Folly Road. And I find that compelling from personal experience and also from the information that's presided. And D is, would the variance be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property owners? And I think Ms. Fabry was focusing on stormwater, and I think that has been addressed at least to my satisfaction. But then I go back to, for the last 2 years, this has been occurring and there have been no complaints. So obviously there wouldn't be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property owners. E is obviously not applicable as per the staff opinion. And F is, the variance was not the result of the applicant's actions. And I got to tell you, because early in the first discussion we had, I kind of chuckled when Roy said, hey, well, maybe it is caused by their being so successful. And I said, well dadgum, is that, you know, is that right? And I mean, it was good, Roy. It stopped me to think. But then the staff pointed out that the variance is sought to improve the traffic flow due to an increase in patronage. And you really can't blame that on a business, because businesses that we approve here, we want them to be successful. So it meets F, and it does not. G is, does it substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan? And the staff pointed out that it meets the, they call it the meeting and the impacts of a changing population on the existing transportation system plan. I'll admit I haven't read that, and I'll defer to the staff that this variance does comply with that. But also it gives the town a new multi-use path, which satisfies another transportation element need of providing safe pedestrian and bicycle systems. So for me, I think the applicant has come to us in a situation where there are certain facts on the ground that exist. They have sought a variance. They have taken the concerns of not only the BZA, but the letters in opposition, and they've come back with a plan. And I think the plan meets all of the criteria. So at this point, of course, I haven't heard from Ms. Lyon or Ms. Fabry. I would be inclined to approve the variance request.
Thank you so much, Mr. Savage. That was a very succinct synopsis, and appreciate you going through all the criteria. Honestly, I would tend to agree with you on those. And I think the applicant has really done a great job in listening to the community, listening to our questions and concerns, and, come back with, a much more acceptable plan, if you will, to the community and for our concerns and addressing, the stormwater, the runoff. It sounds like, most importantly, that they would meet the criteria set forth for us to approve. Those are my thoughts. Anyone else want to comment or discuss or bring up any other concerns that we may not have looked at yet?
I'll just throw in a comment, if I may, in response to Mr. Savage. I think this is not before us, but I would just say that overall, these chains like Starbucks and Chick-fil-A have sometimes become, while successful, nuisance businesses in their communities, because their corporate plan is to build on a certain, size lot and plan for X amount of cars coming through daily. And because of the growth in our community and other communities and the popularity of the business, they've outgrown what their corporate, build plan is. But I don't think we should hold it against the applicant, because, that's for Chick-fil-A corporate, that's for Starbucks corporate, that's, something that I think needs to be the purview of Planning Commission and Council to change the ordinances in our code to address situations like the businesses such as Chick-fil-A that are going to have a high traffic volume, that are on main arteries, and the fact that they could impact traffic, emergency vehicles, the quality of life of the neighborhoods behind them. So I'm just going to, say my piece there. That's why I don't think that, they meet criteria B, because directly across the street, we have Starbucks that basically blocks that entire intersection, during the day. And it's the same thing with Chick-fil-A. They're stacking up in the neighborhood and on Folly Road, causing a nuisance for the neighborhood and people traversing Folly Road. That said, I think with Mr. Wilson's opinion that they are in violation of the code without a double drive-through, it leaves us really no choice, because to deny this is to further exacerbate the issues that they're already trying to solve. And I agree with Mr. Savage in that the, stormwater plan today, hopefully, is a lot better than it was many years ago, and they will have to bring it into compliance, which to me is a positive. But I will say, I just kind of am going to have to hold my nose and vote for this one, because I think I would love to see them move across the street to the Bilo parking lot, where they have lots of space to run their drive-through and build a giant Chick-fil-A, and everybody who's going to the beach and everybody who lives on James Island would take advantage of it. But that's a burden that, we can't put on the applicant by, asking them to do that. But it would, if they want to think about it, I would suggest that would be a really great use of that space, because you would have a lot of business. So that's all I'm going to say on that. And I just wanted to clarify that, that's my reluctance to vote for this, is because I don't think they meet some of the criteria. But I think by not granting this, that we are going to cause a bigger problem than already exists.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fabry. You raised some great points. Any other comments, discussion?
Well, I guess for the record, I want to agree with Mr. Savage, and although I understand Ms. Fabry's comment about generally applying, I want to say that I think that the conditions still don't generally apply to everyone. Maybe they do apply to some, but I think that there's some discretion in that. And so I understand what you're saying, but I do think that they meet all of the criteria. I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Any other discussion, comments? We did get the opinion from Attorney Wilson regarding the double drive-through and how they had been operating. As they had, it is not permitted by code without a variance, and we have that for anyone wishing to see it on the record. Francis has all that with that'll be in our minutes. So any other questions, comments, concerns? If not, I will then call for the vote. If we could please do a roll call vote. We are voting to approve the variance request for construction of the double drive-through.
Okay. Commissioner Fabry,
Aye.
Commissioner Hip,
Aye.
Vice Chair Savage,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
and Chairwoman Lyon.
Aye. So the motion carries. It's unanimous. The ayes have it. And for the applicant, the final decision will be mailed to you within 10 working days. You may contact planning zoning staff with any questions about the approval. I would like to state for the record, the legal reason for the decision is that board members felt that it did meet all the criteria, with the exception of Ms. Fabry, who had some concerns, but felt like she would vote for it in lieu of the other issues it might cause. The other 4 members felt like it met all the criteria. We do have a meeting June 21st, next month. So I hope everyone will be there. And does anyone else have anything? I'd like to say a special thank you to staff. This has been a very important case to our community, as all cases are, but you've had to do a lot of extra work. We've had 2 meetings, and we really appreciate all your hard work. And I want to thank the applicants for listening to the community, and sounds like you're working really hard to make your business a better place and respond to the crazy increased growth that our island has seen explode over the past years. And I was thinking 16 years ago, I don't even think we had a town. So, what was permitted back then, it just, everything was so haphazard and just not what we have now. We're very blessed to have our town and some control of our destiny now, and such a great staff. So thank you all, and thank all you board members for serving, and everyone just asking such great questions and working so hard. So I'll hush now, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night. Y'all take care.